Howdy guys, I hope y'all are doing well. Today we're going to go over a subject called the hiddenness or the silence of God. And a lot of times in our struggles and our heartaches and in our pains, sometimes it seems that God is nowhere to be found. And it's very difficult a lot of times to think, why would God allow us to go through these certain things? Why would these things be happening to me? What did we do to deserve this? And I know that I've thought that many times, unfortunately. But we're going to go through this in Genesis 37, 3 through 4 to begin with. Now Israel, which is Jacob, Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. So Joseph was absolutely adored by his father. He was the favorite son. He was hated by his brethren. And he was given this coat, this badge of his love and affection from his father. Let's go to verses 18 through 28. And when they saw him afar off, this is his brethren. Remember, we just saw that he was despised by them. Okay? When they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against Joseph to slay him. And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say some evil beast hath devoured him. And we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, Let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty, and there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat, and lifted up their eyes, and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brothers, What profit is it that we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him. For he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. So what happens? Joseph is betrayed by his own family, his closest people, the people that are supposed to love him and to treasure him. He is betrayed by his closest people. And what do? The first thing to do is they strip the very jacket, the coat of many colors, the badge, the symbol of his love and favoritism. They take that away from him. That very symbol that he is so adored and loved and cherished by his father. And so now he has nothing. He is forsaken, cast into this pit to die. At first, many of his brothers thought they were just going to leave him there to die. Reuben was going to try to save him later, but then they end up selling him into slavery. So it comes from Joseph being the most beloved and treasured person in his family. Born to be probably the head of the family, to be the leader, is now the lowest of the low in slavery. All the things, the coat of many colors, all those things of good, all those good things of his life, all the wonderful future he had planned out, it's gone, ripped away, and destroyed. He's now made a slave to be drugged across the desert, probably walking the whole way to Egypt. From being the first person in his family to now being the very bottom tier of any. From privileged love to uncaring slavery. Was God with him in this? Where is God? Why is God allowing this to happen to him? Now let's go to chapter 39, 1 through 5. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, and the Egyptian, bought him from the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, And he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. This is the first time we see the Lord being with Joseph. It's mentioned in Scripture. It's the first time we see that mentioned. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in the sight of his sight, and served him. And he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had put into his hand. And it came to pass at the time that he made him overseer in the house and over all the land, all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. So Joseph may have been a slave, but suddenly now he is risen to the most trusted person above all of the captain of the guard's household. And it says God was with him. First time this is mentioned. Is this the moment that he has looked down and he has saw the wickedness that has befallen this innocent man? Is this the moment where God speaks and God delivers him? Maybe he's going to be the heir of Potiphar's house. Maybe he's going to be given his freedom to be able to go back and to confront his brothers and get his revenge for what they've done. Is this his moment of triumph? That God has entered the picture and now it looks like things are finally going to get back? Is that what happened? What is the thing to come? Is freedom and redemption coming? Let's go to verses 7 through 8 and then verse 12. It came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and said, Lie with me. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. Let's go to verse 12. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. So, suddenly Joseph's blessings, the things that God has privileged him, because all the things in his hand have prospered, has attracted temptations. But he overcomes it. He overcomes the temptations. This is Joseph's moment. This is his triumph. Here comes the reward. After all the pain and suffering, the forsakenness, here comes his moment. Verses 16 to 20. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant, which thou hast brought unto us, came unto me to mock me. And it came to pass that as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass when his master heard the words of his wife, at which she had spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. And he was there in the prison. What's happened? Joseph didn't fall into the temptation. He didn't fail here. What is his reward? Prison. Jail. Forsaken again. The love of his master is now turned to wrath before his very eyes. All the things that looked like the hill was finally getting crested through this trial, and even conquering the last temptation here of the flesh. You crest that hill only to find out that you have fallen into the valley below. How horrible must this have been for Joseph? How could we have felt, or how have we felt, when it seems like all these things, we're finally getting through these things, and suddenly it is like the world takes a sledgehammer and beats us and pins us to the ground again. And we cry out, Where are you, God? Where are you? Do you not see what's happening to me? Do you not see that I'm trying, and I'm trying to get over this hill, and I'm trying to follow you? Yet over and over again, it's like life is beating me to a pulp, beating me down. Where are you? Why are you silent? So now let's go to verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Wait a minute here. Come on, God. You're going to throw me in prison? But you're going to show me favor while I'm in the pit, while I'm in the prison. So now I was a slave, but at least I got to see sunlight. Now I'm here under the earth with no light at all. But it says that the Lord was with him, and that mercy was shown unto him. That's interesting. Even in the darkest, deepest moment, when all hope is gone, it says that God is still merciful, because you're still breathing. You're still here. It's not over. God hasn't forsaken you and given you up. Now let's continue, verses 1 through 8. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended. But before this, I want to preface this. Remember, Joseph is able to interpret dreams. Okay, just remember that, because I forgot that earlier in the thing. And his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers, against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season inward. So these people are thrown into prison by the Pharaoh of Egypt. Okay? And Joseph is put in charge to serve them. So even in prison, Joseph is still being a servant to others. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man with his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, and were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. So, let's think about this real quick. These people are thrown in prison. These are people that are under Pharaoh himself. They're servants of Pharaoh. They're thrown in the one place at the exact moment with the only person in the world who could interpret a dream. And they happen to be given dreams. Isn't that interesting? That at the right time, at the right place, at the right intersection of history, these people ended up in the same lowly state that poor, innocent Joseph was in. Is this by coincidence? Or is there something more? Now let's go to verses 13 through 15. Now Joseph interprets the dreams. We're going to skip that for time. And yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee unto thy places. Joseph's telling the dream of the cupbearer of the Pharaoh. He's saying that he's going to raise in 3 days. He will restore you. That's the interpretation of the dream. And thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand after the former manner when thou wast his butler. And listen to this. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into this dungeon. So here Joseph makes a plea. Out of the kindness I have showed you, please remember me. Please remember me. Is God with Joseph? Surely this is his moment. Surely right here, God is finally going to speak. In this moment, once again, Joseph has done a kindly deed to somebody. Is the moment finally come? Let's go to verses 23 to 25, and then verse 1 in chapter 42. Okay. And it came to pass on the third day, verse 20. It came to pass on the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again. And he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Verse 23, yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot about it. Poor Joseph. Poor Joseph. What does verse 1 say? And it came to pass in the end of 2 full years. 2 full years later. Poor Joseph, man. His petition was forgotten for 2 years. Through all the struggle and the heartache and the trials and the tribulations, imagine the heartbreak of waiting each day, waiting for God to remember you. But did God forget him? Was it God that forgot about Joseph through that time? Through all this, the time of silence, and it almost seems like God is hidden from his face from him. Was God hidden for all that time? So now let's go to verse 9 to 12 and then 14 through 16. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my thoughts this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me inward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he, and we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams, and to each man according to his dream did we interpret. Okay, verse 14 to 16. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. I have heard say of thee, that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. Verse 16, and Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer to the peace. This is so interesting that through all of this, Joseph still somehow is clinging to God through all his sufferings. Through the midst of his sufferings, he's still saying, it is God that works through me. Did God really forget about Joseph through all that time? Verse 37 through 41. After he interprets Pharaoh's dream, the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto the servants, can we find such a one as this, a man whom the Spirit of God is? In whom the Spirit of God is. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall over my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. So suddenly, from nothing, from the lowest of the low, to being set forth under the entire land of Egypt, only being under Pharaoh himself, just like when he was with his brothers, he was the favored son, only over by his father, overseen by his father. Suddenly we have come full circle. All the suffering and all the hardships, and Joseph is finally redeemed. Now let's look at chapter 45 when his brothers show up. Now we're going to skip a lot of material here, but when Joseph finally reveals himself to his brothers, watch what he says. Verse 1 through 8. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him, and he cried, caused every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. So these are the ones that betrayed him. These are the ones that destroyed his life. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the Pharaoh of Egypt heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Does my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you have sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves. He is able to forgive them, that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life, because the famine and whatnot, it happens in Egypt. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in which there shall neither be hearing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by great deliverance. So all this time we're waiting for Joseph's deliverance. He's the one that ends up delivering them. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. So here's what I want to ask. What Joseph just said. Was God in the pit with Joseph when he was betrayed by his own kin? Yes. He was with him. Was God in the blistering heat as he was being dragged by camels into the land of Egypt, leaving his family and life behind? Yes. Was God there when Joseph was accused and unjustly imprisoned for something he didn't even do? Yes. God was still with Joseph. Was God with him while he was in the prison? Yes, he was. Was God there when the two servants of Pharaoh suddenly showed up at just the right time? Yes. Was God there when the cupbearer forgot Joseph and all hopes of his salvation is stripped away for 2 years? Yes. God was still with Joseph. God would never left him. God never forgot about him. Even when it seemed that all hope was lost, God was still working a plan of salvation through him to save and redeem his brothers. We will all suffer, sometimes unjustly, sometimes justly. Does that mean that you are alone and that there is no point through that suffering that we go through? It's not according to the scripture. You are never alone. Sometimes the silence of God ends up leading to the salvation of yourself, salvation of a family member, or even nations, as we just saw with Joseph. So, the one thing we can learn is Joseph never gave up hope. He clung to God even in the midst of his suffering. He never gave up hope through all of that, even when the light seemed to be so distant that it was insurmountable. So in our suffering, in the silence, it seems, God may be closer than any of you or any of us ever think. Why? Well, God took part in our own sufferings on the cross. He was the just given for the unjust. He isn't just the God of fair weather and high tides. He's also the God of suffering, pain, and sometimes even death. But God never ever forsakes you or leaves you. He endured for us so that we never ever have to suffer alone. God knows your sufferings all too well because he took part in them. So I hope that this was an interesting study. I really appreciate y'all listening. I hope that God blesses y'all this Christmas season and that y'all are all being able to see and spend time with your family and rejoice. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch y'all next time. God bless.